We need to move on to that. Day 5 of this nationwide postal strike. Workers demanding higher wages and better conditions. Just a few weeks before Christmas, we know charities are being hit hard by this. A lot of small businesses are very worried about it. How long will the government wait in hopes that this gets resolved at the negotiating table?
It's correct, as you just said, to acknowledge that this comes with harm to small and medium-sized businesses, in particular, also people living in rural and in more remote areas in Canada who don't have access as easily as others to parcel delivery. It's more difficult for seniors and others. So yes, it's hard. And we expect the two parties, the unions and Canada Post, to do the right thing to come to a negotiated agreement. This they need to do for the benefit of obviously the corporation, which needs to continue its service first mandate, but also to the benefits of the workers who work very hard every day for Canada Post and expect to be able to have a long and fruitful career in the organization.
The last time there was job action, though, and I appreciate the circumstances were a bit different, I believe it went on for 5 weeks. If that happened this time, we'd smash right into Christmas. Is the government really willing to wait, given the economic and sort of human impacts that might have?
So what we're asking to do, given the proximity of Christmas and all the difficulties that this strike is creating for Canadians, businesses and workers alike, we expect the unions and the corporation to sit together. The good news is during this, as we now speak, because we just, Minister McKinnon just nominated a special mediator, and that person is active as we now speak to reconcile the views and the interests of the organization and the unions.
We should say to people, though, the understanding is that they're far apart. But I want to talk about the future of the organization because that is a big part of your portfolio. Canada Post top executives have warned of the need for significant changes for them to survive. Let's listen to a bit of that.
Our recently released annual report makes it crystal clear that the Postal Service is facing major challenges financially and operationally. The parcel delivery market has become hyper-competitive. We're going head-to-head, toe-to-toe against established global players and low-cost new entrants that emerged through the pandemic. As a result, our parcel delivery market share has been cut by more than half.
So a lot of conversation there about the challenges they face from private competitors. Is your government having conversations about rethinking Canada Post's mandate at this point?
One thing will not change and something will need to change. What will not change is the service first mandate of Canada Post, including serving every Canadian regardless of where they live, including in rural and remote areas. What will need to change, as the CEO just acknowledged, is that this mandate needs to be delivered in different ways. Now, 6 billion letters delivered in 2006, less than 2.5 billion just last year. So it's clear that letter delivery will increasingly be a smaller part of the operational work of Canada Post. But the parcel delivery, although competition is very fierce, parcel delivery is increasing at a very high speed. We, as customers, know that we're buying more and more electronically things that need to be delivered by parcel delivery. That's good news for Canada Post because Canada Post is uniquely well positioned to proceed to parcel delivery in all corners of Canada.
Does 5-day-a-week delivery still make sense for the time that we're in?
That's a great question, and Canada Post and the unions are currently talking about this. So there are all sorts of other things that need to be reconsidered, including the type of work and the nature of work and where that work is done and how often it needs to be done.
So help me understand how much of this gets worked out at the negotiating table and to what extent the government needs to step in and say, okay, the constraints that we have put around this, the charter, I'm not sure if that's quite the right term, but it hasn't been updated since 2009. Like, how prepared are you to shake things up?
Well, the organization, the executives need to be supportive of the evolution of Canada Post, not only for the customers, whose behavior is quickly changing, but also for the workers. We want those workers to have stable and good jobs for the future, but these jobs need to evolve. Now, again, letter delivery will be very rare in just a few years from now. So we want the workers and the organization to keep serving Canadians wherever they may live, and that will require a different type of operations.
Okay, but so I'm still not sure I understand how many of those steps are going to come from you versus the conversation that's happening at the negotiating table?
They come from the Crown Corporation, which is independent from the government, and they also come, obviously, from the support of the unions and therefore the workers. They're all in the same team. They all need to work together and to figure out how to secure the future of Canada Post.
But surely at this point, the government has something to say about any of this when we hear that the future of the organization may be in peril, or they're losing money right now, have been for several years?
Yeah, well, it does indeed cost money to serve Canadians everywhere they may live. They're not a purely profitable company. They need to serve Canadians, again, in a social and economic context which differs from what private companies would otherwise do. That we acknowledge. Obviously, the financial pattern that we've seen in the last few years cannot continue for much longer. We need to redress the financial situation so that we can keep Canada Post serving Canadians again in a service-first mandate.
Is this something that's going to get fixed during the lifetime of the current government? You have a lot of priorities right now. We're talking about some of the problems at the beginning of this interview. Is Canada Post going to see any kind of dramatic change that comes from the government in the next year?
Well, change will flow over time. It's obviously going to take several years. And other countries are facing the same challenges. No, it's the same thing everywhere. All sorts of other postal services across the world also need to evolve and adjust according to how life in 2024 is different from what it used to be just a few years ago.
Okay, so in closing then, Minister, you talked about the people who are depending on this service in the short term, but also in the long term. What's your message to them?
Well, we want you, the organization and the unions to really work even harder together to find a negotiated agreement.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Jean-Yves Duclos is Minister of Public Services and Procurement.